You came in after me, I asked, feeling the fetid mixture coating me softly dripping off. I was so glad my low-light vision was in black and white. I could imagine the gray tones as just mud. Nothing good ever comes from leaving you alone, Blackjack, P21 said with a small smile. Then he looked over at the remains. I guess there was enough light coming in from above for him to get a good enough look. How could any pony do this? I stared at the gory pool. There was no way of telling how many ponies had been put through the machine. Dozens? Hundreds? How many ponies had been working here? One thing was clear, though. Sanguine knew exactly how to get my attention. He'd known there was one surefire way to bring me to him. This was it. Then my ears twitched just a little bit. Blackjack. I stared at P21, and the mayor's voice croaked out again. Blackjack. I turned and saw a blue bar on my EFS align with a hopper bin of the rock crusher. A chill ran through me for a moment, and then I was scrambling up the lip of the bin. Thickened blood smeared the sides. A small heap of limbs and burst flesh lay at the bottom. And then part of the heap moved. Eyes opened in the gloom. Hey, Blackjack, croaked Dusty Trails. I didn't hesitate. I jumped into the gruesome hopper and slid down beside the sand-colored earth pony. Dusty, you're alive! I couldn't believe it. Take more than a rock crusher to kill me. She looked at my legs and smiled once more. See, you got yourself some fancy new legs? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to smile. Yeah, even got a radio built in. I looked at P21 as he pulled the torn goblets of flesh away with his hooves so we could see how she was trapped. He looked even more ill as he examined the area. She gave a weak little smile. He stopped the feeder when I was halfway through the jaws. I looked down at her hips. Cast some healing magic on me. Made sure I survived, she said, and I reached out and held her. She was burning up with fever. Told me to give you a message. Told me yesterday if I hung on, you might kill him. Fucking bastard. She coughed. He was right. I hung on. I knew you'd come. Knew glory would save you. Right. Now you hang on, and we'll find a way for glory to save you. Just hang on, I said with a sniff. But I couldn't see how. Her waist was trapped in a jagged 3-inch wide hole. Celeste only knew what condition her legs were in. I didn't have a second life support jar for her head. Don't be an idiot, she murmured with a frown. You ain't got time to waste on me. He's going to flank next. How'd he take you out? P21 asked. Snipers. Armed with beam rifles. Took a few hours, but 2 of them picked off every pony with a gun. Then Griffins dropped stun grenades. Rounded us up with a bunch of freaks. After that, they marched us down here. Said they were waiting for you. Ghoul was half out of his mind. Kept waiting for you to show, talking to himself, jumping at his own shadow. Finally, he got sick of waiting and started tossing folks in. Saved me for last. Griffins? Red-Eye? I muttered. Maybe. If so, the way they were looking at him, if you don't kill him, they will. They're powerfully ticked off at the moment. She coughed again. Funny. I'm powerfully ticked off at him too, I said with a sniff. She rubbed her face with a gory hoof and looked at me. Think you can do something for me? Doubt they found it. Weren't much interested in looting. She pointed towards the exit tunnel. It's that way. I jumped and clambered out of the hopper, spotted the worn crate in the direction she'd pointed, Inside was a large clay jug. I recognized it from the arena and carefully cradled it as I walked back to the hopper. She looked up at me with a lazy smile. That sure is some funny zebra trotting you're doing on them fancy legs of yours. The original owner was half zebra, I replied, as I pulled out the stopper and was assaulted by the potent alcohol fumes. It actually cut through the stench of the room. I brought the opening to her lips, and she steadied it with her forehooves and took a long drink. Finally, she sighed. Mother's milk. She sniffed and looked up at P21 and me. Promise me you'll drink the rest of this over his damned corpse. I couldn't trust myself to speak. I jerked my head in some spastic imitation of a nod. Can you send me on my way? It was Flank and Minnie all over again. She was dead. We all knew it. It was just a question of how long would it take her to die. Do it, Blackjack. Do it. Draw that fucking gun and give her peace. Yet I just sat there like an idiot. I couldn't move, couldn't draw vigilance, and give her the peace she'd so deserved. I'm sorry, I murmured as I hung my head. I wish I could. After everything I've been through, I still can't grant you that. 'Tweren't your fault, you're a decent mare, she replied. Then she looked at P21 calmly, and he didn't hesitate. Med-X? P21 asked softly as he opened his saddlebags. 5 doses. 5 doses? Mare can really end her pain with that much, she said softly as he took out the syringes. If it were no matter at all, she began to inject herself with the chems. Oh, Blackjack. Can you do me one last thing? I slipped the moonshine into my saddlebags, and I looked at her. Name it. On your way out. There's this button, she said, her voice growing softer as more of the potent painkiller entered her system. Red. Key is in my hat, she sighed. Was going to use it, but got stunned before I could. I'll take care of it, I promised. I could do at least that. Take care of things. Better than I did? She sniffed as tears started to run down her cheeks. It was a good mine, Blackjack. I did right, didn't I? She began to foam at her mouth. Celestia'll be proud, won't she? She will. I know she will, I said as I held her, listening to her raspy breathing becoming more and more broken. Thank you. Thank you for all your help. 'Tweren't nothin'. She smiled slackly, pulled her battered hat off, and set it atop P21's head. For the chems. Best to settle debts. He nodded and then said softly, Yep. She slowly curled forward, pressing her face into my metallic limbs. Then she let out her breath in one slow rasp. Her blue bar disappeared from my EFS. And that was that. It took me a few minutes to pull myself away and crawl out of the hopper again. I reached down, hooked my hoof to P21's, and pulled him up after me. I sat there, hanging my head. This was... He kicked me so hard I was knocked to my side. I blinked up at him in astonishment as he glared down at me, his breathing taut and hot. My head spun from the impact, and all I could do was gawk at him as he sat on my chest. If you say the words, my fault, I will hit you again, he said sharply, then grit his teeth and spoke slowly, his voice tense. This wasn't your fault. None of this. You didn't know this was going to happen. He stared down at me. And if you start with that I'm scum, or I fucked up, or anything, I will beat it out of you. I should have dealt with Sanguine sooner, I said. If I'd... Again, his hooves thumped down against my face. Hard. I didn't... Another thump. I coulda... Thump. Finally, we just lay there, him panting and me feeling blood trickle from the swelling lip and nostril. We just stared into each other's eyes, angry tears dancing in his. I won't let you hate yourself for this. Damn it. He was right. As much as my instinct wanted to pin this all on myself, I couldn't. This was one burden that wasn't mine to bear. I smiled. Then, let's get the son of a bitch who did this. He helped me to my hooves and then tugged Dusky's wide-brimmed hat more squarely atop his bushy mane. We headed out and he murmured, I'm going to tell Scotch. About me. About her mom. Everything. He sighed softly, rolling his eyes a little. I guess we messed with her memories for nothing then, huh? We wanted to protect her and keep her happy, I replied as we made our way up. I kept a careful eye on him. He looked horrid and exhausted from the enervation, but I didn't think he was in fresh, melting territory yet. The field wasn't quite strong enough. Still, it'd make the mine a death trap for anyone working here. One nick that wouldn't heal a pony, and they'd be finished. And there was still a lot of gems in these rocks and tunnels. I spotted the red button she'd mentioned and grinned, rubbing my metal hooves together. Then I reached for the shiny, candy-like button, and P21 bumped my hoof aside. You ever think you should find out what a button does before you push it? He asked as he lay on his back, looking at the gap between the button and the wall. Case in point. Dynamite. I blinked and grunted. Why would Dusty want to blow us up? She didn't. She wanted to blow up anyone stupid enough to push a button, he said as he cradled the hat in his hooves and pulled a metal key out of the brim. He slipped it into something on the backside of the button and turned it. I reached for it once more, and once more he smacked my hooves away. But, key! I promise you can press the button. He looked a little more, and then nodded. Looks like the key activates a delay in the fuse. He whispered softly. She rigged the mine to blow. Guess the idea would be to get down here, get folks out through the tunnels or something, and blow the mine behind them. Smart. He sighed as he looked back the way it would come. Too bad the stun grenades ruined the great plan. So, button? I asked with a grin. He sighed and closed his eyes. Wait 15 minutes for us to finish searching on top and get cleared out. Push it, then run for your life. Outside. Then he trotted out, mumbling to himself about babysitting. I sighed as I waited, tapping my hoof against the wall beside the shiny button and sucking on chips and chunks of tasty gems. Each one gave me an invigorating rush, which in turn gave me inspiration for new and interesting ways to handle the job before me. Should I push it slowly or deliberately? Mash it with enthusiasm? A rear hoof jump push? It wasn't every day a girl could push a button rigged to a bunch of explosives. You sure are one-twigged mare, the dealer murmured. I glanced over my shoulder at him. You have a friend die in your hooves, and now you're giddy with glee at pushing a button while soaked in the blood of murdered ponies. And talking to you, I added, refusing to let him interrupt my contemplation of buttons and the pushing of them. P21 already convinced me not to kick myself for not being able to stop this. As soon as I push this, we'll head to flank and try to think up some exciting creative ways to kill Sanguine.